What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Favale coming at you with the final 2024-2025 NBA season look ahead. We did it. We're on to the Utah Jazz, which means I get to talk to the homie, Tony Jones from The Athletic. He covers the Jazz, the Nuggets, and the Sixers. We get into all things Jazz. Follow him on the Twitter machine at TJones on the NBA, spelled exactly as it sounds. You can find the links to his Twitter handle as well as where you can support his work on The Athletic in the podcast and YouTube description. What you should also do, bounce around, check out all the content we put out in prep of this season. We have over-under pods. We predicted wins for every single team. That was the over-under pod. We did our awards pod, went live, and we have all 30 look-aheads live. We did it. 30 teams. 30 teams a lot. Shout out to Grant and I for getting these episodes up. We hope you enjoyed them. And if you've not subscribed already, freaking change that already, please. Apple, Spotify, ratings and reviews on Apple do a ton for us, so go over there and do that. We love seeing when you write reviews as well, so please help us there. Subscribe on YouTube, turn on post notifications, comment on our videos, like our videos, share our videos, our shorts, comment, like the whole nine. Help the algo. Love us back. We appreciate all your support as always. And finally, it's crunch time because this is releasing on a Monday. We will be closing it Tuesday before opening tip. Come join the Discord. Join our over-under competition that's in there. If you win, you get a merch item of your choice. Look, this merch is fire. You can't see the back right now, but you can see the logo. Proud Sickos right there. But also, you get a chance to guest host a podcast with Grant and I. You'll do a mailbag, and you will kind of moderate that. That should be a lot of fun. Who doesn't want, I mean, like I said, life-changing stuff. So Discord, link is in the podcast and YouTube description. Go join, fill out the over-under form. You'll be using the same over-unders as Grant and I did. Can you beat us even? That, I mean, I was bottom 5 last year. I think I was bottom 3 or 2. So you could probably beat me. Can you beat Grant, though? That's the real question. That's about it for me. So let's get to talking a bunch of Utah Jazz stuff with the one, the only, Mr. Tony Jones. Tony, welcome back. Thank you so much for coming back. Year 4 for you doing the Utah Jazz look ahead with me. So you've been back quite a bit. How are you doing?
I don't even feel like it's year 4. I feel like we're in like year 10 because our chemistry is just like, I know exactly where you like the ball in your shooting pocket. So
that's your first mistake, is thinking that I could shoot. So I won't be catching anything in a shooting pocket. I'll be deferring right back to somebody else. I thought you were about to say it feels like 10 years because you're always in my mentions starting shit just randomly.
Yeah, you got to do that, man. Twitter got to be fun, even though it's like been decidedly made not fun anymore.
Yes.
So
I would concur. So I'm going to continue to ask you about random trade rumors that don't exist when you're tweeting about nothing related to them.
Yeah, exactly.
The Jazz, though, fascinating team. And this is the second year in a row, because I looked back at the outline I put together for you last year, where I said, what can we take away from the previous year, given what happened and how much turnover there was? And so my question to you to kind of open things up is, just seeing the past 2 years, is there like any overarching takeaways that you can still apply to like what you're expecting from this team, whether how it's run or the principles that are happening on the court? Has there been so much change that you can only apply very little from each season? I just find that very fascinating because of how different this team has looked on an annual basis so far.
Well, I think the overarching thing is that, they're still really early in the rebuild. And I think if you gave true serum to Danny Ainge in the front office, they probably like to be a little bit further in the rebuild right now. I think that they thought that they could do it a little bit on the fly, and they realized probably somewhere around a year ago that they probably weren't going to be able to do that. So, I think their focus has shifted to building through the draft. Now, the good news is I think they've drafted really well. Like, they got Keyonte George and Taylor Hendricks out of last year's draft. They obviously traded for Walker Kessler. I mean, these are all legit NBA players. I think that Cody Williams is, might be one of the best players in this draft class. So I think that they've drafted really well. But, the obvious elephant in the room right now is that they haven't gotten the star, and they haven't gotten, the guy that, that's pretty obviously the one. And, I think maybe Cody Williams develops into that.
Oh, I love hearing that.
I think listen, I'm so bullish on him because I don't think there's anything that he can't do on a basketball court. But I worry about him mentally, not mentally as in terms of mentally in terms of I don't know that he knows how good he is. And so I think I think the Jazz want to be in the top 5 of the 2025 NBA draft. So they can get one of Cooper Flagg or Ace Bailey or Nolan Traore or Dylan Harper or VJ Etchcomb. So to me, that sets up a fascinating season because I definitely don't think this roster is worst 5, bottom 5 in the NBA bad. And I think that the Jazz will want to be, the Jazz front office would love to be bottom 5 in the NBA bad. And I think that that's going to set up, to me, a really fascinating season to see kind of, where it goes, what wins out. And, I know that, Justin Zanuck, the Utah Jazz general manager, has said, listen, this is going to be a real youth movement this year. And the problem is, well, not the problem, but, when I watched this team in the preseason, the youth on this team is good. So, it will be interesting to see exactly, where this season goes. But, I think that a successful season would be if, on the night of June, whatever, 2025, the Jazz are making one of the first 5 selections in that draft.
So is there a chance that Will Hardy is on the hot seat because he's winning too many games?
No, God, no. He's the Jazz are very happy with him. They love the job that he's doing. I think he's one of the best young coaches in the league. I think he's a terrific young coach. And he's one of the reasons why, the Jazz haven't been able to tank so far. Because the coach is too good. So he's somebody that I can see leading the team to a championship at some point. And they just picked up his option for next year, and I expect extension talks to get started next summer or towards the end of next offseason.
Is there anything, my serious question, is there just anything if you had to single out 1, 2 things, whatever you want to single out about the job he's done over these past couple of years that stylistically, philosophically, that he's getting so much out of teams that, I mean, no one had the Jazz being over 500 past the midway point in each of the past 2 seasons, and that's what they did. So is there something that stands out in particular about the job he has done during this time?
I think, there's a couple of things. Like, his players really love him, and they play hard. He gets his teams to play hard, and he gets the most out of his teams. Now, I think there's a question of what happens when he gets a roster that is expected to win. What happens if he gets a roster full of veterans? But he's dealt with the veterans just as well as he's dealt with the young guys. Like, if you ask Jordan Clarkson about Will Hardy, Jordan Clarkson, absolutely loves him. Lauri Markkanen absolutely loves him. So the veterans relate to Will as much as the young guys do, probably considering they're almost the same age. And he gets the best out of guys. Like, I think Collin Sexton has come so far under Will Hardy. And
oh yeah, that man belongs on a good team. Collin Sexton it's official. I think he was underrated when he left Cleveland, but he's like caps lock underrated now.
But he's so much of a better player and a more in control player now than he was when he was in Cleveland. And that's because he's listened to Will and he's allowed to Collin to Collins' credit, he's allowed Will to coach him, and he's allowed Will to coach him hard. And, you know, the two don't always agree, but I mean, it's been a really, really good partnership. And, you know, Will's made some real strides, allowed Collin to make real strides in his game. And Collins' work ethic has really taken over. So, you know, I think that if you look at, you know, Sexton, and you look at how much Markkanen has progressed under Will, how much, you know, Will's one of the reasons that Markkanen was like, I'm signing on August 7th, so you cannot trade me this entire season. You know, Will Hardy's one of the reasons why, you know, Markkanen wanted to stay with the Jazz so badly. So, you know, he's done a number of things culture-wise. He's done a number of things in the locker room, a number of things, you know, on the floor, you know, X's and O's wise, that's really, you know, kind of made the Jazz too good.
I've been asking everyone this, but from what you kind of said at the top, it makes me think that the answer could be sort of a default. Is the biggest storyline you're tracking for this team, like, how does it get to the bottom 5 spot that it wants when you look at the coach that they have, and then even some of just the talent that I would say is outsized relative to those, like having Markkanen and Clarkson and Sexton, and even someone like Kessler, and potentially if Taylor Hendricks gets even better from last year? Or is there something else that's like kind of the biggest storyline you'll be looking at?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I mean, the obvious answer is yes, right? Like, I think that that's fascinating, you know, because, and I'll tell you why. I watched the Jazz on Tuesday night against the Sacramento Kings, and both of those teams played a regular NBA game. They played, you know, their regular rotation, all 48 minutes. Both of those, they both played hard. You know, they weren't. It wasn't like Denver last night on Thursday night. I'm sure you watched the game, but you know, we love Nikola Jokic, but he was doing cardio out there. He was just on a treadmill out there, and it wasn't that between the Jazz and the Kings on Tuesday. That was a real NBA game, and you know, that 48 minutes that I was watching the Jazz, the only thought I had was, oh my God, this team can win 38 games. That was literally the only, you know, I mean, I tweeted it. I'm sure you saw the tweet, but I tweeted it, and I was just like, yeah, this team can win 35 to 38 games as is. And, you know, that's probably 12 to 15 games too many, right? So, you know, I think one of the things that, you know, you could count on is that this version of the Western Conference that we're about to walk into this year is really deep and really good. So somebody has to lose games, and, you know, paper dictates that it's probably the Jazz and the Portland Trail Blazers. But man, you know, when you have Markkanen and you have Sexton and you have Keyonte George, I think Keyonte George looks a lot better. And you have Taylor Hendricks at the 4 and Walker Kessler at the 5. Like, there's a lot of size and there's a lot of length, and, you know, there's, you know, dynamic ball handling in Collin Sexton. And there's just a lot to work with there. And the Jazz are going to lose games, you know, because they're not on paper as good on paper as about probably around at least 10 to 11 other teams in the Western Conference. But, you know, the fact that they play hard from night to night, the fact that they're not going to be a pushover, it leads me to believe, you know, how does this team get to 25 wins? You know, it's like, so, you know, if I'm dubbing the Utah Jazz this season, how do you hustle in reverse, right? Like, how do you take a team that's probably too talented for 25 wins and get it to 25 wins? And I think that that's probably a fascinating thing to watch.
It feels like if they end up being not even better than expected, but on pace for too many wins, or like, I think the biggest mistake some teams make, or maybe it's not a mistake, but they're hesitant to do something substantial earlier in the season, whether it's beginning kind of the minutes management for veterans or making trades. Do you think this front office is committed to the point that, okay, if like the Jazz come out like absolutely on fire again or something, that they'll start making some decisions we would normally see in December, January, February before then.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see because, this front office typically doesn't make drastic roster decisions until February. There are some exceptions. In 2019, there was the Jordan Clarkson trade for Dante Exum, and that changed the Jazz quite a bit. Also in 2019, they cut Jeff Green pretty much in the middle of a road trip. So that was an exception. But, mostly on the norm, they take the first few months and then they assess and then they kind of go from there. In the last two seasons, they kind of pulled the plug around the All-Star break and that was it. March was, just kind of, hey, we're just going to lose as much as possible. And, but I mean, the thing that stands out to me is that, even deep into their roster, I mean, there are a lot of guys that this team wants to develop. And I think that that's atypical from where we were last year in the year before, right? So let's say you're sitting your regulars, right? And, even at the end of the roster, you want to develop Kyle Filipowski, or you want to develop, or you want to see, how Brice Sensabaugh, handles 35 minutes, or you want to see how Cody Williams handles 35 minutes. I think one of the things that will help the Jazz hustle in reverse is, you play Cody Williams a lot of minutes, even with the regular rotation. You play Isaiah Collier a lot of minutes. And I think Isaiah Collier right now, if the season started today, and it won't start today, but it will start in 96 hours, or 120 hours, that, he would be the primary backup point guard. So, it's going to be really interesting to see, how the Jazz mesh their veterans versus how they bring along and develop their young guys. How many minutes does Jordan Clarkson play from night to night? How many minutes does John Collins play from night to night, even though he's probably not going to start to at least to begin the season? So how does all of that stuff work?
What the hell happened with Walker Kessler last year? And even to the point that he's being bandied about in trade rumors. Was it he was injured, wasn't fitting with John Collins? We saw some of his efficiency on the interior go down. Is there something else at play? Is he like running a social security scam among the 65 and over community that we don't know about? Because it felt like this guy went from revelation to expendable to this team very quickly.
Well, I don't think he was expendable, because I think if he was expendable, the Jazz would have already traded him.
That's a fair point.
I know for a fact that they've turned down multiple trade offers for him, multiple good trade offers from multiple teams, because, like you just mentioned, if a Walker Kessler goes from here to here, there are teams that needed centers this summer, some obvious teams that were going to check in on Walker, and there were some obvious teams that did, and there were some obvious teams that put offers on the table, and the Jazz said no to all of them. And they were good offers too. So this is a really big season for Walker. But to go back to what happened last year, I think that there was a sense among the Jazz that Walker didn't have the greatest offseason ever. So that really that contributed to it. And then he got hurt on opening night, and that contributed to it. And he came back, and by the time he came back, John Walker had kind of locked down the center spot, so that contributed to it. And then by the time that happened, Walker kind of got into his own head and got really frustrated, so that contributed to it. There was just like a snowball effect of issues just kind of really contributed to it, to what happened with Walker. And, and I think that there was some culpability on both sides. I thought there was some culpability with the Jazz, and I thought that there was some culpability with Walker Kessler himself. So the good thing is that Walker's camp and the Jazz, they had a kind of a come to Jesus meeting in the offseason.
Okay.
And Walker had a really good offseason. And he got bigger, he got stronger. He blocked 4 or 5 shots against the Kings. So the things I want to see from Walker, just covering him, right? I want to see him screen better.
It'd be nice if he connected on those things a little more often, huh?
He's, people talk about Rudy Gobert and they say, oh, well, what makes Rudy different than some of these other people? What makes Rudy different from Walker Kessler? What makes Rudy different from, Derek Lively? I'm just throwing names out there. I'm just, and the difference is Rudy Gobert is by far the best screener in the world. By far. Nobody's even close. And, so I digress. But anyway, screening is really important, and Walker has to do a better job at it. He's got to rebound the basketball. He's got to finish. And I think that he's one of the best rim protectors on earth. He's got to keep doing that. And, and I think that he's one of the reasons why, I think the Jazz are too good to win 25 games, because if you put him in the middle and you have him protecting the basket, it's going to be really, really difficult to score at the basket. And, and I think that Walker, I think he needs to have a big season because, next year he's going to be eligible for an extension. Mm-hmm. And I think, so what happens this season is going to go a long way for me to determining, whether he's with the Utah Jazz in years 5, 6, and 7 of his career, or if he's on another team in years 5, 6, and 7 in his career.
Keyonte George, I was smirking to myself while I was doing the outline for this because I really try to not let preseason cloud my judgment of pre-existing samples. And one of my questions was how concerning was his efficiency, especially after the Jazz kind of tore it down? But I was thinking to myself, he's just had some moments during the preseason where he looked so much more in command of the offense, still kind of comfortable getting to his spots, feels like he has some different takeoff points and angles. And so I was thinking to myself, I just can't bring myself to worry. But is that an actual concern? Preseason is the qualifier. But what are you kind of looking to see from him heading into year 2?
I want to see the efficiency improve, obviously. I want to see the game slow down for him. But most of all, I want to see him run a team. And this is a big year for him. I think the Jazz know, this is what they know about Keyonte George. They know that he's a starting level guard in the NBA. Mm-hmm. But here's what they want to know. They want to know if he's a dude or if he's just a starting level guard in the NBA. And there's a difference, right? They want to know if he's Keyonte George, or they want to know if he's potentially the next Devin Booker. And I think they want to know that. And I think they want to know if he's a point guard or if he's a 2 guard. And I think that's those are 2 things that they want to know. Now, I think that Keyonte I think he's had a really good preseason. Mm-hmm. I think that he's looked really good. I think that he's, getting to his spots. He's getting to the basket. He's shooting the ball better. I want to see him averaging somewhere around 6 assists a game, somewhere in between 6 and 7 assists a game. And, not somewhere between 3 and 4 assists per game. So, I think that those are, important things, important benchmarks for him to hit. I think, the Jazz want to see, they don't want him to be a 50, 40, 90 guy. But they want to see him somewhere around 45% from the field, somewhere around 90% from the free throw line, and somewhere around 37% from three. So it's an important season for him as well. But I think that the Jazz know that there's a floor there. Like, they know that they have a starter. They at least have a starter in him. But they want to know whether they have a starter or they have a star.
Yeah, I do think I don't know if I believe he will be like a floor general type guy long term, but I was very impressed just as a rookie with the flashes he showed there, because I didn't even think he had basically a chance of being that type of player last year. And so he turned to me there, even though like the efficiency wasn't always there. There's of course the mistakes. I'm wondering if this team is set up. I mean, if Walker Kessler is screening better for one, like that's a pick and roll combination that I feel like should be better than it was last year. Right. And that could maybe open up pockets for him to get to the rim. So I'm very kind of interested to see what his trajectory looks like this season specifically, if Walker Kessler is one, healthier, two, a bigger part of what they're doing, and three, just better overall.
How do you feel about the Keyonte George comparison with Jamal Murray?
I just don't understand why he would shoot for the floor.
So that's the floor, Jamal Murray.
No, I'm just not. Anyone who listens to this podcast just knows that I've not been like the biggest Jamal Murray guy. I guess I don't mind that comp, but do you think he has like the off-ball ability that you're like, who is, because I can't picture him playing off of someone else the way Jamal
Murray works because he has Nikola Jokic to do the playmaking for him.
Right.
So there's obviously not a Nikola Jokic on the Utah Jazz. So, I mean, is like I said, I mean, the Jazz want to know if there's a ceiling for him. Like, can he be an all-star in this league? Can he be a guy? Because you probably need three guys to win an NBA championship. So the Jazz have one guy, that's Lauri Markkanen. So if you're an NBA championship level team, Lauri Markkanen's got to be your number two, right? So can Keyonte George be your number three, or can he be, a co-number two with Lauri Markkanen, and then, you hopefully get your number one out of one of the next two drafts?
Or did you draft him at number 10 this year? That's the question.
Or did you draft him at number 10? Listen, I am so high on Cody Williams.
Can you get into it? Can you explain? He was number one on my big board very quickly leading into the draft. I would have probably, if I redid it, put Reed Shepherd number one, but he wouldn't have fallen lower than two. So what is it about him that intrigues you so much?
I will put it to you like this. If the Jazz had the number one pick, they might not have drafted Cody Williams, but Cody Williams would have been very, very deep into that conversation. Wow. Like they still might have drafted Ricochet, but Cody Williams would have been like right there in that conversation. So the fact that the Jazz got him at 10, like they were doing backflips. But man, there's just not a skill that he doesn't have. Like, he can shoot the ball, he can dribble the ball, he can pass the ball. He's athletic enough. The athletic pop is there, that he's dunking on you in traffic. He can
stronger than he looks too, because he's like kind of spindly, and I think people associate that with being frail and weak, and he's not.
I mean, I saw him take a DHO against the Kings, snake it into the pick and roll, and find an open shooter. Now, the open shooter did not make this shot, so I was very upset. But
cut him.
Found the open shooter on a diagonal pass, and I was just like, Jesus, like that sequence. Like, you start in the corner, you flash, you take the DHO, you take the DHO right for you basketball fans. DHO is a dribble handoff. You take the DHO, you go right into the pick and roll, and then you find like that, and you find a shooter diagonally in the corner. That's high level stuff for a guy who is yet to play an NBA game. Mm-hmm. he was pressured out high by the Kings on one possession, blows by the possession, goes to the basket, and gets a goaltend. I even kind of, in the locker room after the game, I kind of chided him. I was like, you got to turn that over. And he was like, oh, the goaltend? I was like, yeah. I was like, Cody, you got to dunk that. And he was like, no, man, I was fouled, but I'm a rookie. I'm not going to get that call. I was like, oh, you were fouled? He was like, Tony, he's like, go back and look at the replay. I was clearly hit on the arm. And Lauri Markkanen is right there. Yeah, like he was hit on the arm, but he's a rookie. He's not going to get. But it's just the kind of awareness that he has, and he can play both ends. He's switchable. I think he's an NBA shooting guard. Like, I don't even think he's a three. I think he can be.
Oh, really?
An oversized two.
Huh.
And which would be great for the Jazz if they got Ace Bailey or Cooper Flagg, right? So because he could just slide in at the two. But the thing, like, you can always point to stuff that people have to get better at, but as a rookie, but it's usually basketball stuff. Mm-hmm. And obviously you're obviously going to get better by osmosis, but there's not a skill that's not there. So my dog wants to make an appearance. Hi, Nola.
We love dogs around these parts.
Get down.
Hey, she's high on Cody Williams too.
Yeah, she's high on Cody Williams. So, there's not a skill level that has to appear that he has to accrue. He just has to keep developing all of the skills that he has. My thing with him is he's got to get bigger, he's got to get stronger, and his body has to physically mature. And mentally upstairs, he has to realize how good he has a chance to be. Because to me, I think that's going to be his biggest obstacle. Him waking up one day and being like, oh my God, I can be a 25-5 guy in this league because I'm just that good. And, I think that his brother has it. I think his brother knows it, but I think that he's got to know it too. That
kind of is like adjacent to my concern for him, where it's directly related to where I'm wondering if he can do all these things that I like about him in higher volume. And the other thing I'm not saying, and that would tie into, do you have the confidence to do it? Like, to be in that constant mode of I am the guy. And the other thing I'm not quite sure that I see, he moves so seamlessly, like everywhere on the ball, off the ball, that I guess I could see it, would be, do you think that he has the perimeter? Like, I do feel like to be a guy, like one of the top two guys on a really good team in the NBA now, you need to be some type of a perimeter self-creator from one of those two levels, like, or both levels on the outside. Do you think he has that into his game? Because I kind of see someone who he wants to rather, if he's going to create for himself, put the ball on the floor, try and get to the basket or spray it out to someone or dump it off.
Yeah, I think that part has to come along as well, and just like the shot making from playing the spots, right? So let's make a comparison there. So I think that Cody Williams right now is a better all-around basketball player than Ace Bailey. But what does Ace Bailey do right now that Cody Williams doesn't do? Ace Bailey plays two spots. And when he gets to that spot, he's a shot maker. Mm-hmm. So right now, if you're projecting Ace Bailey and Cody Williams, you can more easier project Ace Bailey to be a number one guy than you can Cody Williams, who's probably a better all-around player, who defends better, who's a better passer, who's a better playmaker for others, and just in general, just a better all-around basketball player. And the other thing with Ace Bailey is Ace Bailey right now, he's a killer. Like, he's like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to drop 25 on you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And Cody's like, yeah, man, I'm going to take this 10, 7, and 6, and I'm going to take, and I'm going to be a plus 15 while I'm doing it, which is great. But, you got to have a guy to have to build battle of being the number one guy is to have a number one mentality. And, I think that's where Cody needs to develop. But I tweeted, I was like, one day Cody Williams is going to wake up and realize how good he is, and he's going to start making all-star teams. And I really do believe that he has all-star upside.
I think you're the only other person I've come across that is as high on Cody Williams as I am. I was not anticipating. I guess I did not know you were this high. That makes me feel less like an insane person that I was so high on him.
Yeah, we're here.
The Jazz do have one of my other favorite prospects in the league that I'm smitten with in Taylor Hendricks, who I just remain. I don't even care that the offense wasn't necessarily there last year. I think he's going to be really good. What were your initial impressions of just the time that he spent with the actual Jazz last year, and what are you kind of monitoring for him in year two?
Follow me on this. I think that Taylor Hendricks is wrong for the 2024-2025 Utah Jazz.
You say you think he's wrong?
I think he's wrong for the 2024-2025 Utah Jazz. But I think that he could be insanely valuable for the 2027-2028 Utah Jazz.
Okay.
So let me explain. Taylor Hendricks right now is a guy who is a really valuable role player, valuable 3-and-D guy, can switch effortlessly through positions, can make a three, can make a couple of threes, can make 3 or 4 threes, can probably be a small ball center in a playoff setting. But the Jazz don't have that infrastructure around him, right? Okay. Like to maximize that skill set, you got to have a team of guys who were moving the ball's popping. Obviously, you hit Taylor in the corner, he hits threes, he's coming down, and we're playing for something, right? Like we're 53 and 29, and we're playing for something. Like right now, like Taylor Hendricks would be awesome for the Denver Nuggets. Just absolutely awesome because he could play 3 or 4 positions. He can play them defensively. He can even protect the rim. He can play out on the perimeter, and he can make shots. He's wrong for a team that has a roster of guys who are trying to play for their next contract, which is what the Jazz are right now. Mm-hmm. So, the ball's going to move because you're not going to play for Will Hardy if the ball's not going to move. But the ball ain't popping because, these guys are playing for their next contract. You got a whole bunch of people playing on their first contracts, and you got a whole bunch of veterans who are seeing their contracts come up. So, who's contract-wise, who's comfortable on the Jazz right now outside of Lauri Markkanen?
I mean, Sexton's got to be feeling his next deal is coming up. So, if that's your terms, but I mean, it feels like him and Jordan Clarkson should be and fairly comfortable with their status in the league, I would think. Whereas all these other guys, even if they're still a couple years away, they're just not as established. Right. So they're playing for that too.
Right. So in 2 or 3 years, when the Jazz are playing for something, Taylor Hendricks becomes potentially, one of the more valuable role players in the league.
I think I guess I see that logic. I would be curious. Do you see any more I think it was the Kings game that you're just talking about. He catches the ball on the mid post and he just quick processing is able to spin and get to the hoop. Yeah. Do you see more of that type of offense in him, more on ball stuff that he can, even if it's only 1 or 2 dribble stuff rather than kind of being this compliment?
I think I do. I think I do. But I think he's going to be a guy who's going to make threes as, a 6'10" big, and, he's going to attack off the dribble. He's going to attack closeouts off the dribble. 1-2 dribbles, either pull up and shoot, go all the way to the basket, or find the next pass. I don't see him being a self-creator. And I don't see, the offense an NBA offense going through him. But if you put him on the right team and you put him in the right in the right circumstance, the way he defends, his versatility, I personally think he can guard at least 4 to 5 positions in the NBA.
He's as a rookie, the way he was moved around and then like held his own against literally everybody.
Yeah, and he's going to play 15 years at least, just because he has that skill set combined with the skill set of him being able to shoot the basketball. But that skill set's just not going to as readily show up on the 2024-2025 Utah Jazz.
Okay.
Because there are so many people who are trying to establish themselves. So the ball's not going to always find him. And, there are going to be a lot of games where you look up in the third quarter and, he's got 2 to 4 points on 2 to 4 shots on this team. Now, where this is what he can control, I would love to see him rebound a lot better. And I would love to see him, averaging 8 to 10 rebounds a game, because I think he's going to have the runway to do it. And, obviously, him defensively, just keep doing what you're doing defensively. But I want to see him rebound the basketball a lot better than he has at this point.
It does seem like, just based off what I've seen on preseason, like that he might have the green light to kind of get in there on the offensive glass, like coming in and zooming in from the corners and like the 45-degree angles. So Lauri Markkanen, this is either great podcasting or terrible podcasting that we haven't really talked about him 40 minutes into a Utah
because
Jazz.
We know Lauri.
Well, I have 2 questions. And one of them, if I was to give you truth serum, to renegotiate and extend, which you were all over, kudos to you. How much of that was about, okay, the Jazz view Lauri Markkanen as a mainstay? How much of that was about preserving an asset? How much of that was also kind of like, did it factor in at all that, well, we're going to suck on purpose and we want to make sure that he doesn't get wandering eyes himself? Like, of just those 3 things, like what's kind of the biggest like factors that go into making that decision this past summer?
Well, I think that there was the erroneous part of the whole thing was there was this thinking that the Jazz had to trade him. And that was just kind of dumb. They didn't have to trade him. And I think, there were teams that were just going only so far because they felt like the Jazz had to trade him. Like,
can I nominate one?
I'm going to just say this. I'm not letting Brandon Podziemski get in the way of me and Lauri Markkanen. I'm just not.
Thank you. Oh, my whole conspiracy theory, by the way, is that the Warriors, well, of course they liked Lauri Markkanen. That whole pursuit felt purely performative because all the reporting came out like they don't want to give up Pods or Kuminga or any of their picks. And it's like, well, then what are we doing here? It felt very much like we just want to show Steph that we kind of faked a pursuit of a player who would help us win now.
The truth of the matter is there was not a trade close on. Those sides were not close to a trade there. There was a scenario that the Jazz would have accepted a trade, but it would have involved everything Golden State had. And obviously Golden State's not going to give everything, but the bottom line of the bottom line of the raise, there was a lot of minutia and there was a lot of, like you said, there was a lot of performative stuff. The bottom line of the trade is Golden State only had 2 unprotected first round picks to give. And the bottom line is the Jazz weren't giving Lauri Markkanen up for 2 unprotected first round picks. You can take Pods and you can take all of the pick swaps and all the second rounders that you can. The bottom line is 2 unprotected first round picks. That's all the Warriors had to get. So, that trade just really didn't come close, and certainly didn't come as close to getting done to what people believed or what Twitter believed. So, and the other part of it is, like I said, Lauri wanted to be there, and I think if a team had come in with the mother load and a team had come in and with 4 unprotected first round picks, 3 unprotected swaps, and a good player, I think that the Jazz would have seriously considered it. But, they love Lauri and, they didn't have to trade him and they're not giving him away. They weren't giving him away. And more importantly, they think, there's 100% belief within the organization that Lauri is still going to be this version of Lauri whenever the Jazz get really good again. So, people were like, well, he doesn't fit the timeline. He's 27 years old, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, he's 27 years old, and his strength is shooting 8 threes a game at 40%.
And playing off others is
And
it's different. Others. If he was James Harden at his age, I kind of get it. Like the Helios said, but he scales to every iteration of what the Utah team could be.
Exactly. And, the Jazz were just they were just never giving that away. That was either going to be you meet what we want or we're not trading him. And they didn't end up not trading.
Do you think, I actually asked you this question last year, I think, but this is someone we just mentioned plays off others. Do they try and give him any more creation responsibilities this year, or do they not want to disrupt what he's doing best? But there is a vacuum on this. I mean, you have Clarkson, you have Sexton, you have Keyonte George, but there is kind of a vacuum of proven creators. And so in theory, there would be the runway to kind of experiment with maybe him doing some more things on the ball.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it didn't go very well, but, they did the Dirk Nowitzki thing in the Kings game where you throwing the ball in the middle of the key area and, he can go left or right. And, now he got stripped almost every time for some reason. But, that's just an example of, trying to get him to develop, his chops on the ball in terms of self-creation. So he's going to get, he's definitely going to get a lot of the chances in that area this year. I think Keyonte George is going to get a lot of chances in that area this year as well. And we'll see what happens with it.
Are we able to run through very quickly some of the other young guys on this team and just your general impressions of them, what their roles might be, their fits with this team?
Who do you want to know about?
Let's start with, I think he's become, there's always, from every team, it always feels like there's that one player that Twitter needs to obsess over and prove that they know ball. Isaiah Collier feels like he's going to be one of those guys this year. What have been your initial impressions of him?
He gets to the rim very well. It's hard to stay in front of him. What is he going to do when people start going under his pick and rolls? Because it's the preseason right now, so nobody cares. But what's going to happen when we get to the regular season and he gets scouted and when he's running pick and roll, his man is pretty much in the lane. So the shooting has to come a long way. But he has really impressed this preseason. Like I said earlier, the season starts tomorrow. He's probably the backup point guard. So he's in the rotation. And I think that he's earned his way in the rotation. I think he's defended well. I think that he's run the team extremely well. I think if you took Keyonte George's scoring chops and self-creation chops, and you injected him with the way that Isaiah Collier has run the team this preseason, Keyonte George would be an all-star. And so he's figured out how to get guys the ball in the right spots. I think his pairing with Jordan Clarkson has been a really good one, and I've been surprised at that. But now I know why, because he's not really competing with Jordan for shots. He's just trying to run a team. And, so Jordan can just go and do his thing. So already, if the backup point guard thing sticks and he's able to run the team for 15, 20 minutes at, a decent or high level, I mean, that's already worth pick number 29.
Yeah, I never would have expected him to be so good as just a quarterback type guy of the offense as a passer. In my mind, he was just a scorer, and that's just what I kind of typecasted him as coming in. Brice Sensabaugh, where are we at with him?
I'm still really lukewarm or mixed on him. I think he's a terrific shooter. I think he can make shots. I wonder if he's ever going to get his body to the point where he's quick enough off the dribble to really get the spots. He's crafty. He's really skilled. This is a big year for him. I think that he's got to, kind of perform well. I think he's going to be in the rotation. I think that he's going to get a chance to get some minutes. And but this year is going to be a really big year for him because if the Jazz get the right guy in the draft, and Cody Williams moves back to shooting guard, we'll see what happens. But he can really shoot the basketball. Like he's got a beautiful shot, and he's not afraid. And I think he's an NBA player. So I think that that's proven. It's just what level still has to be proven.
Do you think that he'll be able to kind of diversify the reads he's making when he is putting the ball on the floor? Like, is this someone who gets too much tunnel vision? Is he going to get better at, deferring it all?
I think he makes great reads. I just don't know that he's quick enough to make those reads matter.
Okay.
And, that's the thing. Like, you can be, so like I can make reads, but I ain't quick enough at the NBA level to get to any spots to make those reads matter. So is Brice Sensabaugh, can he get from A to B off the dribble in order to make really good reads? Can he get the A to B off the dribble to get into his shot, to get into what he does from a post-up perspective or what he does from a mid-range perspective? We know he can shoot from above the arc. Like that's what's going to make him an NBA player ultimately. But it's just about what he can do with his body to make the other parts of his game matter.
How are you feeling about Johnny Juzang, who is he's bigger? I always forget that he's 6'7" is basically what I'm getting at. He's like all first team. I forget how tall this guy actually is.
Wow, I thought he was 6'5" myself.
maybe he's being generously listed. I think Basketball Reference was the one I saw that he's 6'7" on.
Johnny Juzang has inexplicably not missed a shot this preseason. So he's been terrific. He's also proving that he's probably an NBA player. He's a one skill guy, right? Like he's always going to be a shooter. That's what's going to keep him in the league. So, he's got to keep working on being a weapon shooter. So keep working on coming off pin downs, keep working off coming off of DHOs. And, but he's a heck of a shooter. And, he's got a big heart relative to that jump shot. So, I think that at some point in his career, he's going to make a big shot in a really, really big playoff game. And people are going to realize that he would have been a first round pick had he come out after his sophomore year.
Kyle Filipowski, what are your initial impressions of him?
I thought he had a really good summer league. I think he's really skilled. I think he's at this point a lot better at the center spot than he is at the power forward spot, because he gets quicker guys at the power forward spot. At the center spot, he's quicker than a lot of guys. Um, you know, I don't know that he's going to be in the rotation so far to on opening night, but he's he's got a lot to work with offensively. Um, I'm not sure how he defends at the NBA level or who he defends at the NBA level, but I think that I think we're going to see. I think he's going to be somebody that can really benefit from going to the Salt Lake City Stars in the G League and just getting a lot of on-ball reps and developing a lot of on-ball stuff. But he's a guy that I think the Jazz are really excited about.
Is there any, because you kind of talked about a few times how they're prioritizing development here. Do you see any plans being in place for how they're gonna? I assume Collin Sexton will start, but like when you look at him, when you look at Clarkson, even John Collins, is this a situation where you could see their minutes being capped, or is there going to be special like rest nights caked in for them? Like, what are just the plans with those vets? Those are guys that probably maybe Sexton could, I suppose, but those are guys that don't really align with where Utah is headed.
We'll see. We'll see if the Jazz are willing to pull out all the stops to get to where they want to go. Because I think that if they are going to get to where they want to go, I think that all of that stuff has to be on the table, like sitting guys on certain nights, being up 97, 95 with 4 minutes to go and inexplicably throwing Kyle Filipowski in the lineup, things like that, just little, subtle things that create a tank, a quote unquote tank, because I think the Jazz are still really walking a tightrope, right? Like they want to have a shot at, the very top of the draft, but they want to be able to develop all of these guys. And they want to be able to keep Lauri Markkanen happy. So, it's going to take some work and it's going to take, some conversations to be had. So we'll see what happens with those conversations.
Are you ready to enter the cookie cutter lightning round portion of the podcast?
Yes, I am ready.
When you look at some of their primary weaknesses from last season, rim pressure, transition defense, turnovers, 3-point accuracy, whatever, are there any areas that stand out as ones in which you think they can significantly improve with the personnel that they have in place right now?
General defense. General defense.
Is this a nowhere to go but up situation?
The perimeter of the defense was kind of bad last year.
And they finished 30th in points allowed per possession, right? Too.
Oh,
so
yeah.
they
were not a great defensive team last year.
I guess like with the jump, if you went with like the front court of like Taylor Hendricks and Walker Kessler, and you have Cody Williams on the floor, and even you can play Lauri Markkanen with that too. Like just having that sheer size might make them better on the defensive end.
Yeah, and I think their rim protection is going to be great because Walker's going to be on the floor. Like he's a rim protector onto himself. And I think that, Taylor being a starter, I think that's going to really help them as well in terms of their switchability. We'll see what happens with Cody, but once Cody's on the floor, I think that's, once he's ready to go, I think that's going to help as well. I need to see Keyonte George and Collin Sexton defend better, man. Because last year.
You're going to keep waiting on the Collin Sexton front, I think, my friend.
Nah, man. I need. It's funny because Collin will pick you up full court, and he'll have the eyes going, the intensity, and then
slapping the floor.
Yeah, and then once we get to the half court, it's just not good. That man's still scoring. So we'll see how Keyonte and Collin develop defensively.
If they have Walker Kessler on the court and now you have both Cody Williams and Taylor Hendricks, could you see them playing at all any more aggressive defense? Like this has not been a team that has like tried to force turnovers on the defensive end in forever. it feels like. Is that something like sometimes you see young teams play a little bit more chaotic and try and generate opportunities through that? Or do you think that that won't necessarily be a focus?
Maybe with Collier on the floor a little bit, but
Ooh.
Keyonte's not a guy that's going to like force you into turnovers, and neither is Collin, neither is Lauri. So, you want to bend but don't break, right? Like you want to, you're going to give up some stuff, but you just don't want teams to go for 150 on you.
Is there anything about this team, whether it's a player, storyline, weakness, strength, concern, whatever, that's flying under the radar that you think deserves more attention?
I think we talked about like pretty much everything. I don't know if there's something that's flying under the radar. But I think that Taylor Hendricks is probably a little bit underappreciated.
Hell yeah.
For
Love it.
what he does. But I think everything else is, kind of we've kind of hit on.
So what does this, if they had their top 10 most used players look like? I assume I have some locks penciled in here. So I have Keyonte, Sexton, Hendricks, Markkanen, Kessler, Clarkson, Cody Williams, and John Collins, which is 8 players penciled in as those guys are always going to play. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. And then you'll probably have Brice Sensabaugh on there, and then you'll probably have. So wait a minute. So your starters will be Keyonte, Collin, Taylor, Lauri, and Walker. Collier will come off the bench. Clarkson will come off the bench. I think Sensabaugh will get Williams and Sensabaugh and John Collins. So probably 10 on some nights, probably 9 on most nights.
Okay. So like guys like a Johnny Juzang's on the outside looking in type deal.
Yeah, Johnny's on the outside looking in.
Why is Drew Eubanks on this team?
Because the Jazz really like veterans and they like adults in the locker room. So that's why you see Drew on this team. That's why you see Patty Mills on this team. And the thing about Drew is Walker, Kessler, and John Collins are most likely not making it through 82 games. So you're going to need another center. So Drew Eubanks is the new version of Omer Yurt 7.
Now, you can interpret this however you want, where I normally ask, I know it's matchup dependent, but what will be their go-to crunch time unit? This is one of the teams, though, where you could look at it and say, are they trying to win that game or are they trying to lose that game?
I think if they're trying to win that game, the go-to would be...
Is it just the starters?
Well, that's the thing with Will, man. Like, Will's not married to people. So, let's just say the Jazz are trying to win this game. Lauri Markkanen is always going to be on the floor 100% of the time. Keyonte George is probably going to be on the floor 85 to 90% of the time. And then after that, it's pretty much who's playing the best. So, Cody Williams was playing really well on Tuesday. He closed the game. And, and everybody was like, well, Will, why did Cody Williams close the game? Are you trying to tell us something? No, I'm not trying to tell you anything. That lineup was going good. So, we wanted Cody out there. And that's pretty much how he coaches. So you'll see, Jordan close one night. You'll see Collin close. You'll see, who's ever playing better out of Walker or John Collins close. If Taylor's playing really well, he'll close. But generally, you'll see Lauri Markkanen close every single night, and you'll see Keyonte George close probably almost every single night.
What's a weird, funky lineup you think Will Hardy should roll out to try this year?
Should roll out?
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything weird and funky. I mean,
they have to. I'm assuming this. I don't know if it'll be a staple, but they have to go the ultra jumbo route with Kessler, Markkanen, Taylor Hendricks, Cody Williams, and then I don't know who you want to throw in as that fifth. The sensibly, you could throw in a bunch of different guys, but I'm just like, try and make it as big as possible. I want to see that be, because I know Hendricks and Cody Williams aren't traditionally huge, but like when you have Williams as kind of your de facto two in that situation, that's a pretty big ass lineup.
Yeah, I mean, that's the lineup I would probably look at. I would pretty definitively put Keyonte in that lineup.
Give me Isaiah Collier for just the chaos.
Yeah, but you don't want chaos. You want production. So
no, I want to get weird. That's the whole point of this exercise. I'm trying to get weird.
But like you can get weird and still produce at the same time. So like, I mean, if you put in two rookies in the starting backcourt, then I don't know how productive, not the starting backcourt, but if you put two rookies in the backcourt, then, we'll see. We'll have to see what happens. But maybe you go, a lineup I like would be Keyonte, Collin Sexton, Cody Williams, Lauri Markkanen, and Taylor Hendricks at the 5.
Okay. That'd be fun.
And just switch everything and just, by all means, just try to hide Collin no matter what.
As we record this, their over-under is at 27.5 games, Tony. Would you take the over or the under on that as of right now? I'm
going to take the under. I think the Jazz are going to do it. I think they're going to find a way to go 25-57 this year.
That's such a you're so right the way you're framing it, but it's just such bizarre. I think they're going to find a way to win fewer than 27 games.
I think they're going to find a way, man. I think we're going to play it straight for the first 3 to 5 weeks of the season, and then we're going to.
Aren't they at a point too, though? Because I think I've seen them be critical of, well, why is Collin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson and John Collins still on this roster? Those are competent players. They're not ruining your rebuild. Like, we've reached the point where they're like, even if they don't start shedding talent, if they're winning too many games, they might just like the coaching just might be too good at that point. Like, what is because aside from, I guess, Lauri, which if that's the criticism, fine. But like, who are you absolutely removing from this team and ensuring that they're going to get so much worse?
I don't know, but I think the Jazz are going to have to figure it out because if they get pick number 11, that pick goes to Oklahoma City. And
right.
That, this is the only, they have 3 first-round picks, but they only control one of them, their own. So they're going to have to figure it out.
Tony, is there anyone I have not asked about that you think needs to be discussed before I let you skedaddle?
You haven't asked me about Svi.
I haven't asked you about Shaswibe either. The big O. How's he doing?
He's the greatest rebounder I've ever seen. And he's a fascinating dude because he went into the soliloquy about how to rebound the ball and knowing where the trajectory of the ball is. And I was just enthralled. I was like, there's really a science to this thing. And he's the nicest guy ever. So I'm really rooting for Oscar.
Maybe we should throw that jumbo lineup we're talking about. Let's put Svi at the 1. That used to be kind of an experiment, I think, during his Detroit days, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't think that would go really well.
Doesn't got it. We're just trying to get funky. Tony, thank you so much for your time. Are you able just to tell our listeners and viewers where they can find you and all the great work that you do?
I am at The Athletic, so please read what I write. And you can banter with me on Twitter at TJones on the NBA. And
I encourage all of you to ask him about trade rumors that do not exist.
Yes.
All the time.
Trade rumor. And then when I report that Lauri Markkanen wants to stay in Utah, then argue with me as to why I'm wrong about that report.
Well, hey, you can't know it. Like, he can't be traded now. So you don't have to, if someone's arguing you about Lauri Markkanen, you can just send them a screenshot of that.
I was just bringing up a hot topic of discussion from from this summer when I said, hey, Lauri doesn't want to be traded. Well, how do you know? Are you talking to Lauri, or how are you speaking for him? Okay. Well, we'll see when he signs.
I just assume Lauri runs all his life decisions by you first. So I assume that you were right by his side when he was deciding.
Not all of them, but I definitely knew that he didn't want to go. I knew that he did not want to be traded from Utah. That one I got right.
Tony, thank you so much once again for all your time. This is a blast to do every year. Best of luck covering the season and having to handle the Nuggets and the Sixers on top of the Jazz. I will be following. Hopefully our listeners and viewers will be following. And as you know by now, I'll be sliding not only into your mentions, but also your DMs down the line.
Absolutely. Thanks, my God. Thank you for having me.